Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this is my review of episode 4 of Obiwan Kenobi. And I kind of liked the beginning of the episode, I think mostly because it reminded me of an old computer game I used to play as a kid, in which the player is stuck on an alien planet and is captured by aliens and then has to escape their prison. And you have to go through an elaborate maze to escape, and there are places in which you have to dive under the water, and there are all kinds of monsters there. And so I think there are a few moments in this episode which might have been inspired by that or a homage to that, especially when Obi-Wan was diving under the water, and you can actually see the kind of creature which looks just like in that game. I only wish there would have been a scene of it actually eating someone after capturing him with the tentacles, and so unfortunately that didn't happen, and so that made me remember that game. And so all those places when Obi-Wan is sneaking around was kind of fun for me personally because I kept thinking about that game. And also there's a lot of parallels with A New Hope when Obi-Wan was sneaking on the Death Star. Almost the same exact things keep happening, like he makes a distraction for two stormtroopers so that they'll hear something on the other end of the corridor. And so a lot of moments like that which make it look as if this was his practice run. And maybe that's why he was so calm when he was on the Death Star and used the same exact tricks again. So it's because it was all a second time that he's doing that. And the same goes for Leia, who is being held captive and is being interrogated, and Riva is going to torture her in a torture device, which really makes her look obnoxious, and this character is supposed to get redeemed later. I'm not sure that will work after we saw her being so obnoxious so many times. And there's also a creepy scene when Obi-Wan sees the bodies of the Jedi who are held in a kind of museum, I guess, which was kind of creepy. I think it would have been better to show that they're being studied, that there will be some kind of purpose to holding their bodies, maybe to extract their midi-chlorians or something, but just holding them as trophies for a display, that really seems kind of sick. And was that one of the younglings that Anakin killed? Like, that makes Vader look even sicker than before, and I don't think he should be so sadistic and twisted, because that kind of ruins his redemption in the end. That he was supposed to be a conflicted character, a bad guy who's not totally bad, but all of this kind of stuff makes him look so evil that his redemption is no longer acceptable in a way. So I think that's a problem, and it will be a problem with Riva after showing her about to torture a small child. That will make her redemption less acceptable. Like, we will never like this character after witnessing this, even though they did try to add a few moments showing that she doesn't enjoy doing that. So she's not totally 100% evil, but still she's about to torture a small child. So this character will forever be a nasty one, no matter what she does later. And there's also a moment when Obi-Wan holds some water from getting into the base, and soldiers are about to get into the same corridor, and he holds the water and then he releases it after the soldiers come into the corridor. And that's clearly inspired by the biblical story of the parting of the Dead Sea and all of that, you know, the Egyptian army being drowned by the sea because of Moses and all of that. And so that was kind of too obvious, kind of too similar to a biblical story. And also when he runs out of that corridor in the last moment and they close the door, there's not a single drop of water on the floor, even though we saw the water is almost on top of him, and so that makes no sense. That seems kind of lazy. And then the most ridiculous scene is when Obi-Wan is hiding little Leia under his long coat with hundreds of soldiers all around, and no one notices that Obi-Wan has 4 legs. No one notices that he's hiding a little kid under that coat, which is so obvious even from the distance. It's hilarious, no one notices that. So I'm not sure if I hate or like this, because this is totally stupid, but on the other hand, it's so stupid, it's funny that it makes it a comedy, so in some way I find it entertaining. So that was probably the most ridiculous scene in the whole show. And then they're rescued by the rebels who showed up in the last moment, of course, and so everything is so predictable and so easy. At least they had the explanation in the end that it was all part of the bad guy's plan, that Riva allowed them to escape because she put a tracking device in that little droid from Batteries Not Included and gave it back to Leia. And so strange, Leia never suspected anything. Like, she took it away from Leia, then at some point she gave it back to her, and Leia never thought there's anything suspicious about that. At least she's a little kid in this show, so maybe that's why she's so naive and trusting, and maybe that's why later in A New Hope she suspected the Empire allowed them to escape the Death Star in order to track them, because it literally happened to her 10 years earlier, the same exact thing. What I don't like about all of this is that it was Riva's idea, and she tells Vader and he's impressed by that, And that means it wasn't his own idea to do the same thing in A New Hope, because in A New Hope there's a scene of Tarkin telling Vader, I hope it works, and so that implied it was Vader's idea to allow the team to escape the Death Star in order to find the rebel base. So that was a clever little bit in A New Hope, which also explained how come they escaped the Death Star so easily, and so that was all part of the bad guy's plan. And so now we know it wasn't actually Darth Vader's own idea, it wasn't his cleverness. He was inspired by Riva. It was Riva who was smarter than him, and she was the first one to come up with that idea, and he simply recycled the same idea later. That's what this show tries to make us believe. And that is kind of annoying. It reminds me of what they did in Star Trek Discovery with Michael Burnham, in which they had scenes telling the audience that Spock only became the man he was because of who his sister was, because his sister was smarter than him, and she taught him everything. And that's why he was so amazing later, because she was better than him. And so that kind of thing is really annoying, inserting a character in between continuities to try to rewrite history, to try to tell us that no, Vader actually wasn't as clever as you thought. Actually, he stole that idea from this other character who is more clever than him. So this kind of thing really annoys me, and so that kind of ruined the whole episode, with that scene of Riva being more clever than Vader. And also it makes no sense, because they say in the dialogue that Obi-Wan is the most important thing to Vader, and yet apparently it's not the most important thing, because he's impressed by letting Obi-Wan go to find the rebels. So that means the rebels are more important, and so why you contradict your own dialogue in which you said a few times that Obi-Wan is the most important thing? So make up your mind. So is finding the rebels more important than Obi-Wan or less important? So they keep contradicting their own dialogue, and that also reminds me of Star Trek Discovery, which couldn't pay attention to its own continuity even. And so that kind of thing, that seems like bad writing in my opinion. And also, how come the rebels never take any precautions to make sure there are no tracking devices on their ships? You know, if they're hiding so carefully somewhere in the galaxy, and yet every single time they fall victim to the same tactic of someone putting a tracking device and then you bring it to the rebel base. Why not have a midway station in which you take some other ship which is totally clean, in which you leave any equipment behind, or scan everything to make sure there are no tracking devices? And so it's ridiculous that it kept happening again and again and again. And also it makes this episode less original, that it's basically recycling the same exact ideas from the old Star Wars movies, and there's very little new things in it. Very little imagination of anything new. It's basically remaking the same ideas again. And so that's why, sadly, I cannot say this was a great episode. The beginning I kind of liked, but then in the end it kind of annoyed me. So that's my thoughts on it. Let me know what you think, and we can discuss all of this in the comments below. And I will see you all next time. Bye bye.